In 1981, Rush released Moving Pictures, the album that would completely transform their career. At the heart of that record was Tom Sawyer, a song that not only became the band's signature anthem, but also elevated them from a cult progressive rock trio to one of the biggest arena rock acts in the world. What makes this story so fascinating is that Rush didn't achieve mainstream success by abandoning who they were. Instead, they refined everything that had made them unique, packaging their complex musicianship into shorter, more accessible songs without sacrificing their identity. That formula made Moving Pictures one of the most influential rock albums ever recorded. But the journey to that moment was anything but straightforward. Rush had long been recognized as one of the most technically gifted trios in rock history. GeddyLee, AlexLifeson and Neilpeart weren't simply exceptional musicians. They were three artists whose chemistry allowed them to create music unlike anyone else. Many technically brilliant bands never escape cult status, but somehow Rush managed to break through to a much wider audience. When they released their self-titled debut album in 1974, their sound was rooted firmly in hard rock. They had far more in common with Led Zeppelin than Pink Floyd, and perhaps most importantly, Neilpeart had not yet joined the band. His arrival changed everything. Widely regarded as one of the greatest drummers of all time, Peart also became Rush's principal lyricist and a major creative force. His philosophical lyrics and adventurous songwriting pushed the band towards progressive rock, giving their music greater depth and ambition. That evolution became clear on Caress of Steel in 1975. The album featured lengthy compositions made up of multiple sections, taking listeners on what many would describe as a musical journey. Songs such as The Fountain of Lamneth, running for nearly 20 minutes, showcased the band's fearless creativity. Commercially, however, the album struggled. Its complexity proved challenging for casual listeners, yet it was an essential stepping stone, marking the moment when GeddyLee, AlexLifeson and Neilpeart truly found their musical identity together. The next chapter came with 2112, now widely regarded as one of progressive rock's greatest achievements. The album opens with a sidelong suite set in a dystopian future where music has been outlawed until one man rediscovers its power. Complete with an accompanying storyline and printed lyrics, it was far more than a collection of songs. It was an immersive experience. Although it wasn't an instant commercial smash, 2112 significantly expanded Rush's audience. It established them as progressive rock legends and opened the door to larger tours, where their reputation as a phenomenal live act continued to grow. The following years saw Rush pushing the boundaries of progressive rock even further. Albums such as A Farewell to Kings and Hemispheres were packed with intricate arrangements, unpredictable time signatures, and compositions stretching well beyond 15 minutes. Their music became increasingly ambitious, yet somehow remained exciting and engaging. Then came the question that surprised many fans. Why would a band so closely associated with complex progressive rock begin writing shorter songs? Some assumed it was pressure from the record label to chase radio success. The band themselves have consistently denied that. According to Rush, the change happened naturally. After years of writing epic compositions, they simply wanted to explore a different approach. At the same time, synthesizers were opening up exciting new creative possibilities, and the band were eager to experiment with fresh sounds while continuing to evolve. That decision led to Permanent Waves in 1980. The album still carried all the hallmarks of Rush's progressive roots, but the songs became tighter, more focused, and considerably more radio-friendly. Rather than abandoning complexity, they distilled it into more concise arrangements. The approach paid off almost immediately. The Spirit of Radio became one of the band's biggest radio hits, combining memorable melodies with Neilpeart's inventive drumming and the musicianship Rush fans had come to expect. It was the perfect stepping stone towards their defining masterpiece. 1 year later came Tom Sawyer. The song feels like the culmination of everything Rush had learned throughout their career. Its opening guitar riff recalls their hard rock beginnings. Neilpeart's drumming remains inventive without becoming overwhelming. GeddyLee's bass locks tightly into the groove, and synthesizers play a far more prominent role than ever before. The result was a rock song that sounded fresh, intelligent, and instantly memorable. Ironically, creating it was an exhausting process. The band struggled to complete the recording, often questioning whether the song would ever come together. They wrestled with guitar tones, experimented endlessly with bass sounds, and encountered numerous technical issues in the studio. Eventually, engineer Paul Northfield suggested recording the guitar through a stereo speaker setup, giving the solo its distinctive, spacious, almost tubular sound. That single decision helped bring the track to life. Even GeddyLee abandoned his trusted Rickenbacker bass in favor of a Fender Jazz bass to achieve the sound the band were searching for. Studio equipment also malfunctioned repeatedly, forcing engineers to adjust volume levels manually during recording because the automated system refused to cooperate. One of the song's most iconic drum moments happened entirely by accident. Neilpeart briefly lost his place during a take and instinctively improvised his way back into the groove. Rather than removing the mistake, the band realized the improvised section sounded fantastic and kept it in the finished recording. A simple accident became one of the most recognizable moments in rock drumming. Tom Sawyer also marked Rush's full embrace of synthesizers. Although keyboards had appeared on earlier records, they now became a defining feature of the band's sound, without overshadowing the powerful guitar, bass, and drums that had always been their trademark. When Moving Pictures was finally released, the response was extraordinary. The album perfected everything Rush had experimented with on Permanent Waves, while preserving the qualities that had always made them unique. That is what separates Rush from so many other bands. Where others lost their identity in pursuit of commercial success, Rush managed to evolve without compromising their artistic integrity. Every song on the album was also written with live performance in mind. Neilpeart's drum parts remained challenging, yet practical enough to perform night after night on tour for decades. That is one of the reasons why Moving Pictures continues to resonate today. It isn't simply an album to admire through a pair of headphones. It's an album that makes you tap your feet, air drum every fill, and sing along from beginning to end. Commercially, Moving Pictures became the biggest success of Rush's career. Although the band had already spent years producing exceptional music, this was the album that conquered radio, climbed the charts, and introduced Rush to millions of new listeners around the world. From that moment onwards, their musical direction changed forever. Rush continued to experiment throughout the decades that followed, with synthesizers becoming increasingly prominent on later albums. Yet, after Tom Sawyer and Moving Pictures, they had discovered the perfect balance, songs that were shorter, sharper, and more accessible, while remaining unmistakably Rush. That is why Tom Sawyer is still regarded as the song that changed everything, not only for Rush, but for rock music itself.